This webinar was recorded for subrecipients of the Tennessee Strong Families Grant on October 21st, 2024. Melissa Lagraff, Research Associate at SWORPS, was our subject matter expert presenter. The webinar offered principles and strategies for organizations to support their clients in strengthening parenting skills, responding versus reacting, communicating with your child, creating structure and routines, discipline and boundaries, and the importance of self-care were all discussed as ways to support clients in the perinatal and postpartum stages. The slides and reference materials are posted on our webpage for your reference and review. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the UT SWORPS Tennessee Strong Families webinar on parenting skills. My name is Brooke Blair, and I'm the training specialist for the SWORPS Tennessee Strong Families support team. We're thankful that everybody was able to join us this morning. I'm also joined by Chase Polton, our technical assistance coordinator, and our speaker, Melissa Lagraff, who's a research evaluation specialist at SWORPS. Please feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat so that we know who's with us this morning. We are going to record today's session, and then it will be posted to our website. If you don't have our site bookmarked, Chase just shared it in the chat for your convenience, along with our help desk information and our webpage. And then I'll also follow up with the materials and resources from the presentation in an email this afternoon. If you have a question about the material or you want to respond to a question as Melissa moves through the information today, please feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question or put your question in the chat, and we'll be sure to monitor that as well. Just a few quick logistical items. If you're attending today to receive a CEU, this program was approved by the National Association of Social Workers Tennessee chapter, and our provider number is NASW Tennessee 2024-1039, and we'll be giving out one continuing ed unit. If you are looking for the CEU, we please request that you keep your camera on if possible. And then if you have any connectivity issues during the training and you get disconnected, just let us know by emailing our help desk, or once you're able to reconnect, just shoot me a quick message to let me know. In the email that I send out this afternoon, we'll have our attendance affidavit and then the post-test that you'll need to complete for the CEU. If you'll email us those back within 5 business days, so that should be October 28th, you'll be able to receive that CEU credit. And then, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to just email us and we'll help you through that process. So today we're going to be learning about parenting skills from Melissa Lagraff. Melissa Lagraff is an evaluation specialist with SWORPS at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She received her BS in Human Ecology and her MS and PhD in Child and Family Studies from UT Knoxville. Prior to her doctoral studies, she was a county director and Family and Consumer Sciences agent with the University of Tennessee Extension. And in addition to conducting program evaluation research, her research examines how parental work experiences influences parenting decisions and behaviors, as well as how to improve family functioning through family policy and parenting education. She's a certified Fair Play Method facilitator, and we're super thankful that Melissa is joining us today. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to her.
All right, thank you so much, Brooke, and I appreciate the invitation to be here with you all this morning and to talk about some parenting skills. And as you'll see here on this title slide, I picked Parenting for Calm for the title of today's session, and did that for a couple of reasons. When Brooke polled you all, I believe it was over the summer, about kind of what you all would be interested in hearing about today, the topics that kind of rose to the top as I was thinking about those and putting this presentation together, sort of just realized that a lot of these really promote calmness in the home. And so while we know, especially if you have children, which I do myself, I have 3, a 9, 6, and almost 1.5-year-old. Most days are not calm, but that is I think a good thing to aspire to, and we'll talk about how these parenting skills can contribute to that, and why that is a good goal for children and for families. We'll have some opportunities for you all to share and interact throughout the presentation. So Hope you all will feel comfortable doing so. And then also, they're going to be monitoring the chat for questions, but there should be time definitely at the end of the presentation to answer questions about anything covered today. So our agenda, again, this is mostly based on, feedback we got from you all, but first, talking about discipline and moving sort of our definition of what we think discipline is towards guidance. Then talking about the difference between responding versus reacting to children's behaviors. Next, talking about the importance of structures and routines in families. Then a little discussion about setting limits and why those are important. And then ending the presentation about self-care for parents. Okay, so discipline. What comes to mind when you think of the word discipline? So feel free to come off mute to share or in the chat. So we have correction, teaching social norms, rules. Okay. Spanking, consequence, boundaries, consistency. Yeah, we'll talk a lot about that in this session. All right. Yeah, so a lot of great answers here and things that we're going to be getting to when we think about discipline. So conventionally, I think people tend to think about discipline as punishment. And so I want us to kind of explore that and think more about how we can shift that from thinking about punishment. So, when we think about discipline, punishment is really just one type, and it's really should be a very small piece of kind of like the discipline pie. It has a very short-term effect on behavior, and tends to teach, but not in the way that we'd like. So it teaches through fear. Parents are maybe using threats or even pain to punish their child for a certain behavior. It focuses on the actual wrongdoing instead of maybe the behavior or the intent behind the behavior. It really centers the consequences of the child's bad behavior instead of kind of focusing on, why they were doing that in the first place. We're usually, if we're using punishment, we're assuming the child had a negative intent behind why they were doing what they're doing, when there could have been a lot of different reasons as to why they were doing the behavior that are not all negative. And so that means that we, as the parent or guardian or adult in charge, are judging the child's behavior in some way. The punishment may include unrelated and negative consequences. And so in the long run, that's not going to make a lot of sense to children as to why they're being punished when the consequence is unrelated. And the outcome here is that the child may avoid or feel shame, which may just serve to perpetuate some negative behavior. So, again, punishment is short term. It's making children feel bad for their actions, with the goal to discourage them from repeating the behavior, but they don't always, punishment sort of ends that opportunity to teach. And so that can result in fear, anxiety, resentment toward the caregiver who's doling out the punishment. we think about punishment as just trying to control or regulate the child's behavior through fear. And so we're only teaching the child what not to do, instead of what to do. And, really, I think we should be thinking about discipline as guidance and teaching. Um, and so we'll talk about that next. So when you think of the root word of discipline, it's disciple, which is to teach or to lead. And so we really want our goal when we think about discipline and the different options we have, within sort of that pie or framework, um, is our goal is to teach our child good ways to behave and help them, to become a responsible adult. And so sometimes when I was working, with parents, I would have them kind of take a step back and remember what the goal here is as a parent. It's to know our child and to help them grow up and become responsible, productive adults, who function in the world. And so that's, sometimes we lose sight of that long-term goal. And discipline is our way, or guidance is our way to help reach that long-term goal of having a responsible, productive adult in the world. So we want to be able to change our child's behavior without yelling, without punishment. And so we can think of discipline as training that builds self-control and character. And then guidance takes that a step further to help children develop their own internal controls. So that they're choosing to behave in a way, from, you know, from knowing that that's a good thing, from being able to do that internally and not be worried about external factors. And it also helps them develop a positive sense of self, and as well as problem solving skills, which we know that those are really important as they get older and enter into adulthood. So, with conventional discipline, the control is exerted by the adult, but with guidance, the child learns those internal controls. And so listed here on the slide are just some different types of positive discipline or guidance, however you want to kind of phrase that. Childproofing is one way. And so that's really thinking about the environment that your child is in, and setting it up in a way that children make, the choices that we want them to make, that are safe for them, that are good for them. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about structure and routines. But, we're just thinking about how do we make our child do the right thing than the wrong thing. So moving our furniture around, to reduce running through the house, or arranging, the toys in the living room to make that a fun and safe place for them to play. So moving the breakable items out of there. And then schedule management is part of that too. Consequences is another type. And so using those, sometimes just letting the child experience natural consequences, or sometimes having to use consequences that you as a parent have established, but that they're logical, that they fit the misbehavior, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Redirection, especially for young kids, is a great, type of discipline to use. So just that's, basically just kind of redirecting the child's attention to something that they should be doing rather than something they should. And so when kids are really young and they're still learning about the world, and, maybe aren't going to understand detailed directions or reasoning, redirection is a great tool to use to just move them into a place or with items that you want them to be doing or playing with. And then modeling is another huge component of guidance, right? So you as the adult, parents as the adults, are showing children how to behave, and that is oftentimes a lot more powerful than telling children how to do something. And this is important too when you're thinking about emotional regulation and dealing with high emotions, is, the parent themselves, trying to use skills to keep themselves calm um, and regulated. So that is also modeling to the child how to do that. Clear communication is important too. So, and we'll talk about that more with setting limits, but explaining, as appropriate, the reasons and the whys behind what you're doing. And then holding to that consistently, setting and holding limits, right? So kids need those, especially limits to keep them safe. And so parents need to be able to do that effectively. And then listening to and holding space for emotions. We are emotional um, beings, and we need to be able, as parents, to hold space for that, listen to children, and help them learn about their emotions and name them. And that's going to help with their behavior too. And that's a part of guidance and teaching children. Okay, so how do we use guidance to respond to behavior instead of react? So what does it mean to you all to react to children's behavior? What does that mean to you all? And I can open up the chat again, or feel free to come off mute and share. Okay. Yep, so allowing your emotions to take over, maybe kind of letting yourself panic when something doesn't go as planned, irrational, emotionally charged. Yeah. Any other ideas, thoughts? Emotional. Mm-hmm. Yeah, knee jerk. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for these responses. So you all are right on track. So with reactions, let me advance. So reactions are going to be automatic. They're happening without much thought behind them. So they are, excuse me, knee-jerk or impulsive. As people were sharing, usually very much emotionally driven, right? So a child, you know, misbehaves in some way and it may be kind of a trigger for us. And so we're reacting based on our emotions that we're feeling towards the behavior. It's often negative and it's not really an opportunity to teach our children. So instead we want parents to be working towards responding to their children. And so because that if they're responding to their child, they're able to guide them. So with responses, these are more conscious, right? We're aware of how we're handling a particular situation. It's thoughtful, so it's not knee-jerk or impulsive. We're actually thinking about how we want to respond to our child in the most appropriate way. It's rational. So yes, we're not free of emotion. Spilling a drink may still trigger you emotionally, but we realize that, like, hey, mistakes happen. My young kid did not mean to spill my water, and so we're taking a deep breath. We may still feel a little irritated, but we're setting that aside to respond to our child. It's more positive and it can be a teaching moment. Um, and something that I like that I think is a good kind of quick way for parents, a way to adopt this sort of response to behavior is to repeat to themselves, excuse me, stop, pause, and be. So you're having the parents kind of just stop what they're doing, And then they're pausing. And so they're maybe if they're just having an especially emotional response to whatever's happened, taking a couple of deep breaths, maybe 5 is a good number. This is going to help them pause and sort of be aware of how they're feeling and think more rationally about what's going on. It's helping them to notice what's going on around them, and then also being able to take that time to ask themselves, what is happening with my child in this moment? What do they need from me as a parent? So they're stopping, they're pausing, asking themselves this question, what's happening with my child in this moment? And then they're being. Okay, so they're calmly responding to their child based on the needs and or based on the reason that they think the child has had this misbehavior and responding appropriately. And so that's kind of a good phrase for parents to repeat to themselves: stop, pause, be, and using it as often as they need to help with that practice of responding to their child instead of reacting. So,
Melissa,
what are,
great.
yes,
We have a
sure.
great question real quick before you move on.
Okay. Yeah.
Asia says, what if a parent doesn't feel like they have time to pause?
Okay. Um, what would, what would, can we hear more about that? Because you have to, there's time, you're reacting to a behavior too. Is it like more of an emergency situation or?
It's just with so much going on, the
Okay.
stress of the day, what the child may have done is not the only thing that has happened. I'm right in the middle of
Sure.
something, and it's not that there's not enough time to pause. You don't feel that the time I'm pausing, I could be doing something else. Now I'm behind because you have done
Mhm.
this, da 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 da. So
Right. Well, I guess I would just think about it like in the time that you could react to a behavior is the same amount of time that you could, or, in most cases, the same amount of time that you can respond. So, I realize like you may not have time to like fully, um, understand why you were so triggered by behavior and, um, uh, or really, kind of think through maybe how the rest of your day contributed to why this happened. But in the moment, we're having to respond in some way to the behavior. So trying to make that as positive and useful for everyone, um, is typically going to be the better choice instead of like reacting, unless it's like a safety thing, right? And then we're going to have to intervene so that the child isn't hurt or harmed in some way. Um, but I'm just thinking of, something that happened recently when my 9-year-old was just being careless and spilt water, and messes can be just personally triggering for me. And he didn't mean to do that. But we had to respond in some way. It had to be cleaned up. And so instead of me kind of reacting to him and maybe raising my voice, I was able to kind of like take a step back and say, he didn't mean to, but we can talk about like kind of being aware of our bodies and what they're doing and what may else be around us. And then we both cleaned it up together. Does that make, does that help at all? So yeah, I definitely agree that there's not always time to like give it, our full attention, but if a behavior is happening, we have to do something about it, whether it's reacting or responding.
it did. Thank you.
Okay,
I
sure,
just understand that, quite a few of my clients are already under stress, and
sure.
and that little piece right there,
Yeah,
I
no,
could have
and
been doing
that's,
something else.
yes, and that's for sure. And like sometimes that happens in a day, like everything that's happened before just kind of compounds everything. Um, but even if it's just 1 or 2 breaths to where we can like calm down and that we're just not operating from that maybe negative emotion. And so we're more able to say, because even I didn't handle the spill perfectly. I could have definitely calmed down a little bit more. Um, but I think even just calming down some and trying to just pause a little bit can be an improvement instead of just pure reaction. Any other questions on this or any other thoughts from anyone else? Okay. Well, yeah, keep the questions coming and we can keep talking about that. So, um, if we have, the time and space to really think about responding, one thing that helps is to know the reasons behind the misbehavior. So we have a short quiz on, reasons why kids misbehave. So I think um, there it is. So
Can y'all
you
see it?
all can just select all that you think apply.
I'll give you guys about a minute to look through them. Okay, about 10 seconds to finish up. All right, and I'll go ahead and leave it on there, Melissa, just so you can run through them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we want to make these type of webinars a little bit interactive, but this was and so I had this idea to do this poll question, and it's um kind of a trick question because they're all reasons why a child may misbehave. So, and we'll kind of talk through these, but it's important to be asking ourselves why, or for parents to ask why the child is misbehaving, so that we can tailor our response based on that reason for their misbehavior. And so, sometimes I've used the example of like, your car, and maybe you wake up one morning and it's not starting. Well, what do we do, right? We don't always just open the gas, cap and fill up the gas tank. We're gonna have to. That's not always gonna be the solution, right? It may be it's low on oil, or something else is wrong with it. So you kind of, if you want to think about it that way, we have to sort of tick through the different reasons to get to why the actual reason why it's happening. And we're not using the same response for all the different types of reasons, because that's not going to be effective. So I don't need, can I just exit it if I don't want to share the results? Or do I need to share?
It should be gone. Is it gone now?
Okay. I can exit it out. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So let's just kind of go through these. So sometimes, children just aren't aware of the rules, or it could be the rules just aren't clear enough. Sometimes it's because they're curious, especially small children, they're wanting to know how the world works. And so they're going to get into things because they just want to know what it's all about. Sometimes it's because they want control, right? As children are growing, they're asserting their autonomy and their need to sort of be able to make their own choices and to do their own thing. Sometimes it's for attention. At times kids figure out that, hey, um, I'm not, sometimes I get attention when I misbehave. And so that may become a pattern for them. Sometimes it's just because they're not feeling good about themselves. We all have those days where we wake up and we're just not feeling that great. Our self-esteem's low. Um, and so sometimes that's going to lead us to make choices that aren't always the best. Sometimes just because they're tired or sick, right? And so again, that when we're not feeling our best, we may not always do our best. Sometimes it's because just doing things is hard. Being little is hard. All these things are happening around us and we don't quite understand why or how we fit into it. And so life can just feel hard sometimes. And so things can get frustrating and it can cause kids to react. Sometimes something else is just more important to them. And so they're gonna do what's interesting and of importance to them. And oftentimes it's because they're just doing things that is normal for their age to be doing. Um, like I said, young toddlers are just curious by nature, and so they're gonna, get into things that we may not want them to. For example, sometimes it's just because of bad habits that have started, or maybe they just don't know what else to do. Or so I get that kind of goes back to the rules thing, or especially if they're in like a new situation, they just don't know how else to be in that new space. It could be that they're just like that. So our middle child, our 6-year-old, we call him our persistent child, which is a more of a more generous way of saying that he's extremely stubborn. So we just recognize that about him, and we parent him a little differently because of that, because he is just like that and very much different from his older brother. And time is going to tell. I don't know how our 18-month-old is, our 17-month-old is going to, time's going to tell for her. So we're waiting on that. Maybe sometimes they're imitating someone. Again, kids are always watching the adults in the room, the adults that care for them. And that's why modeling is such an important piece of that discipline pie, because they're always watching us. We are their first teachers, and so they're really learning from us, even if it is just our behavior and how we carry ourselves day to day. Sometimes they may just be having like big feelings, they're nervous, upset, disappointed. This happens a lot with our oldest child. He, kind of has these, he feels those feelings very deeply, like anxiousness and nervousness. And as he's gotten older, right, he's been able to express this, but when he was younger, he didn't have the words or ability yet to express that. And so, but we would notice that it would his behavior would be different when he was feeling those big feelings. And so then we would have to kind of tailor our response to him in that way. And then sometimes it can be just a serious problem that requires professional help that, is sort of out of the parent or caregiver's capability. And we can also think about misbehavior as a teacher itself. It's really giving parents information about what what parents need to be teaching and guiding children. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So a lot of this is just very normal parts of a kid being a kid. And then parents need to be able to kind of take that information and not only tailor their responses to the individual behavior, but kind of think about their kind of what they're doing as a whole and maybe what they need to be spending more time on. So another positive discipline or guidance technique or type of childproofing, which is a type of discipline, is providing structure and routines for children. So why are these important? I want to hear from you all. Why are they important for children, structure and routines? So again, you can pop that in the chat or come off mute to share. Confidence boosters, okay. Sense of security, sets expectations, builds security and attachment with the caregivers. Yeah. Understands the expectations. Yeah, these are all great ideas. Any others? Yeah, that sense of security and the structure and routine. Yes. Helps with a child's learning. Yes. All of that. So you guys are right on it. So there's a lot of benefits to structure and routines, and this is something personally I've really leaned on as a parent. There are definitely times where I could, me and my partner, husband could do these better, but I really think it's a nice, it can be a good fix for some of the common things that were, happen in families. And so with structure and routines, as you all mentioned, it's giving children a predictable, stable environment. And the thing about predictability is that it can help with our responses to their behavior too. And so when parents have established a kind of predictable, stable environment, a consistent schedule, it's really easy then for parents to know if needs have been met or not, So if we're kind of seeing some irritability, well, you know what time of day it is. Guess what? We're getting closer to lunchtime. That is probably why I'm sort of seeing this pushback from my kid, is because they're getting hungry, right? So having a good structure to the day or a daily routine can help parents with their response to their behavior, because we're going to more quickly know whether needs have been met or not, for example. And you all were correct here too, that structure routines also helps children feel very safe and secure. And so when children, aren't having to worry about their environments, and they know loving, trusting caregivers are going to be around, they can really engage in the work of being a child, which is playing and learning. And it provides a lot of stability for them and a good foundation. And it also is going to help ensure that needs are met. And so we're going to know, like, oh, okay, they're hungry. We need to get a snack in here. They also help to promote independence and self-confidence. So, the I've seen this too, as we're sort of going back through toddlerhood, after about a 4 to 5 year age gap. How much the routines are helping her kind of learn, like, okay, now it's time, after breakfast, now it's time to get dressed and get our shoes on, and then it's, get in the car seat, because out the door she's going to daycare. So and she's, starting to grab her shoes and bring them to us to put them on. And so it's helping her kind of move through the day. And then these structures and routines also help encourage positive behavior. So, especially, when they're consistent, the children know what to expect. And so they're going to be more likely to meet those expectations, because there's just sort of no questioning it in a way, right? Like, after dinner time is reading time, downtime, and then it's bedtime. And so there's not as many kind of power struggles there. And then it's providing consistency. So this is a really thread right through this particular presentation. We're talking about kind of promoting calmness, but that also promoting this consistency that can be really powerful and important for children. So they know what to expect, they know what's coming, and they know that parents are going to follow through, because that's just sort of the order of the day, what the schedule is going to be. So what are some examples? I want to hear again from you all. What are some examples of structures and routines? Okay, time management, bedtime, yeah, meal and bedtime routines, nap time, yeah. Yes, all of those family dinners. Yes, so those are my examples too. So just having a consistent kind of daily schedule. You know, it's good for kids to be able to be flexible, right? Like, this, if you have things going on, um, it may make keeping really close to your schedule challenging, but if you can be within a reasonable kind of um, um, order, and within kind of a similar range, that can help kids through that transition if things are changing. But we want to keep the daily schedule as consistent as possible, knowing that some days are going to maybe a little off for various reasons. Um, Another example would be just, keeping those consistent rules and expectations for children and following through on those. And then making routines out of those specific um, daily tasks. So thinking about a meal time routine, what that would be, and being intentional about setting that up. Bedtime routines are especially important. And wanting to keep those as consistent as possible. And then someone, mentioned, what was it? Yeah, like family dinners together. And so like that in itself can be kind of like a family ritual. Like sometimes we think about these for only things that come every now and then, like holidays, but there can be other family rituals too that maybe help, that can really help breed family closeness and connection. So things like family game night, right? So that can even be a routine. Um, yeah, and then it can encourage things like reading and things like that. But that can be something that the family looks forward to, the children look forward to, and um, it's just fun and a time of connection for family, which has benefits too for behavior. Is that time for connection and having positive interactions. But parenting skill that requires consistency and promotes calmness, and is part of our guidance, as a type of guidance, is setting limits with children. And with setting limits with children, we want them to be age appropriate. And so they're age appropriate expectations for children's behavior. And I know you all had a training not too long ago with Heather about child development. And so that's where a lot of this information is handy, because you want to know where your kids are developmentally, so that you are being appropriate. So parents are setting appropriate expectations for their children. And the phrase that I like to use that can be easy for parents to remember is warm but firm. So the limits are firm, they're not changing, but we as parents can be warm about them. If you all are familiar at all with Dr. Becky, she does a lot of parenting education, and her company is called Good Inside, and she refers to this as sturdy parenting, right? So, gentle parenting has sort of been a popular movement, but her take on it is being more of a sturdy parent. And I liken this to being warm but firm with our limits and boundaries. So, we're setting these limits and rules based on, what we know our child to be able to understand. And again, they're reasonable, age appropriate. We don't want these to be too severe, because then that sort of defeats the purpose of teaching them. And then, especially with young kids, really giving them choices from options that the parent deems appropriate is a great way to um, help children feel like they're having some control, but within the limit that you've set. So setting boundaries, helps children learn about the world around them. It's teaching them about social norms and gives them practice with impulse control and delayed gratification, which, those are going to be really important skills as they enter into adulthood. And as well as for just navigating life, is to be able to do these things. And then, these boundaries too can help children manage their emotions more effectively. And when we think about setting the limits, we want to think about how we're explaining the rule. We want that to be, use language, parents to use language that their kid understands. So for example, like when you climb on the bookshelf, I get scared that you will fall. And so that serving as a reminder, like, hey, we're not going to let you do that. And so this is a great technique for positive guidance, but it also communicates to children, that that they so that they understand what you're thinking and why. It kind of gives you a reason. And then, of course, we want to be sticking to the limits. Consistency is key here. So saying things like, 5 minutes is 5 minutes is up, and so now it's time to clean up. Here, let me help you. So that's where the warmness comes in. So you've given a warning for cleaning up time. Then when the 5 minutes is up, you've told them that hey, it's here. We got to clean up now. But the parent is being warm about it and offering to help the child clean up. Sometimes kids will want to test these limits, of course, but they may cry, get upset. There may be a tantrum. And so as a warm but firm parent, you're staying close by, you're reassuring them, but you want to stick to that limit that you've set. So playtime's over, we need to be cleaning up. And so you're just kind of like sitting there with them, holding space for those emotions, that you realize that they do want to play longer. You understand that they're upset, but once you're done being sad, we can move on to the next thing. And again, if we have a consistent daily schedule, they're going to know what's coming next there. All right. And we, also want to encourage parents to be taking care of themselves as much as possible. You know, stress or, feeling like you're a parent who's constantly giving can really deplete our internal resources, in the midst of all these other resources probably being maxed out too. And so we want to try to find ways to help parents take care of themselves so that they can be more available to meet the needs of their children, more apt to respond to kids' behavior instead of react. And oftentimes, kind of setting up structures and routines and setting these limits can be a lot of work on the front end and take a lot of mental energy and feel consuming, but it really helps things later on. So, it's going to take a lot of effort up front, but that really kind of sets the stage to hopefully make things a little bit smoother after that work is done. So why else is it important for parents to take care of themselves? What have you all found? Any other ideas? Yeah. So kind of preventing that burnout, mm, increasing their kind of capability for more effective parenting. Right. So that you're kind of, as a parent, you're putting your best foot forward. Yeah. Um, again, thinking too about the parent being a model here. Um, it's good for children to see parents taking care of themselves, in a reasonable way, right? We can't ignore our responsibilities, but we do want our children to see us taking care of ourselves, resting as we're able, doing things that we enjoy. That's a really good model for children. And then again, it can increase the challenges that are associated with parenting, if we are burnt out and not taking care of ourselves, or feeling like we're kind of have a lot of feeling too tired, to not enough resources to really take care of ourselves and our family. So these here are some ideas for self-care. Children have many needs that need to be met, maybe even more desires and wants um, than that they would like for you to fulfill. But, parents need to have the energy to care for them. And so we want to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. Um, so this is just a quick list right now. There are, I know it's important for a lot of times for these self-care things to be, um, pretty accessible in terms of cost or time. So some things, you know, um, I feel like a lot of these ideas can be incorporated somewhat, fairly easily. But what other ideas, or what do you all tell parents to do for themselves? Or how does your organizations help parents prioritize self-care? What are you all doing in your work? Any ideas how you all are supporting parents to take care of themselves? Yep. So seeking out health care after birth, and getting any kind of mental health care is important. Yeah, a caring community. So sometimes that may look like something pretty tangible, like meals. Just listening to them. Yes. So venting can really help too, and then reminding moms to check in with themselves. Yes. That's right. Yeah, their needs are just as important. Yeah, and then figuring out maybe where they can have like a mom, you take their children and have a mom's day out. Um, yeah, and having kind of that childcare assistance so that they can work or have a break. Yoga and stretching, yes. Getting outside. So yeah, that exercise doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just, a quick walk around the block if that's doable. Yeah, a mini vacation. Yeah, these are all great ideas. Um, and sometimes these relaxation exercises, if that's like of interest to your clients, that can also help bring them um, help them practice awareness and help them practice that response to behaviors instead of reacting. And oftentimes you can find those kind of like body relaxation activity or guidance activities like online for free. But yeah, we definitely want to help parents think about different ways they can take care of themselves. Support groups, yeah, that's always great too. And quiet time alone, yes. And so that's where structure and routine helps too, is like, we look so forward to that time when all of our kids are asleep, right? And so when you have that good routine in place, you're going to get that, unless, of course, someone's sick or it's a weird night, but you can count on that time. Yeah, those are great. So before we get to questions, I did want to end the presentation with this slide, and just to sort of emphasize that parenting is a practice and the goal is not perfection. And that oftentimes, if not all the time, being a good enough parent is really great, right? We don't have to always be a great parent. And it's a practice. It's something that you work at, that you try to keep doing better. And so, and that's something, as a perfectionist, as a person who studies parenting, I've had to really get away from. That I am oftentimes not going to be a great parent, and that good enough is really fine. And so what do good enough parents do? Well, they're sensitive to their child's needs. So just trying to be aware of those and what's needed from the child and how the parent can help meet those needs. Being in tune with their development, right? So understanding that information that Heather shared, that kids are doing things differently, that each child is different, that they're going to be developing in a different way, and we really saw that with our two oldest sons and how they're different temperaments. Being consistent, so which is really hard when life is crazy and stressful, but just trying to be as consistent as possible with limits, with your routines, with your structure, but then also being warm, right? So holding space, listening to your kids, being okay with their emotions, and then firm though, right? So having high but appropriate expectations for their behavior, because again, the role of a parent is a teacher, and we're teaching our children to make their way in the world and to grow up to be productive, responsible citizens. And then and then also explaining the reasons behind the rules as appropriate, allowing for negotiation as appropriate, especially for older kids. They may have some really good ideas or suggestions for you as parents. And that is another way that the parents can show that they're listening to their child. Because we know everything changes. There's nothing ever stays the same with parenting too. And so you have to grow and adapt. Rules are going to change. So you might as well involve children as you can. So now we can take other questions. I know we're kind of running tight on time, but happy to answer those. I know there's going to be a resource sheet that's going to be shared with a lot of helpful links. Yeah, and I think this comment here about, I guess social media and trying to fight that pull to be on our screens can be helpful too. And again, that's going to model to our children limiting screen time as well, as if parents are.
Melody, did you have a question?
More of a comment. I think I've raised a couple of kids, and I found I like, structure and routine is so important. And one of the other things I found as I ended up with multiple children was how well they did when we kind of went over the expectation before outings every time we go to the park. All the kids would yell, these are our few rules, it's we don't go up to strangers, we don't run where mom can't see. And at the end, I would scream, and when it's time to go, and they'd all scream, we go. And so we made it fun. They understood we
Yeah.
didn't make the rules too much. But when I'd go up and one was swinging, I'm like, it's time to go. And I'd hear the but, and I'm like, but what do we do when it's time to go? They're like, we go. And they might begrudgingly come, but
Sure.
I found that to be like extremely helpful. We made it fun. When I'd say it, then it was like they knew the saying. So just to add that into that, it just helped us go in the grocery store. This time we're only here to get groceries. We're not going to be getting any extra little toys. Maybe next time we'll see if we can do something special to earn that, or, it
Mm-hmm.
just really helped my kids like then be able to pull that out and not be
Yeah.
with less tantrums.
Yeah, that is a great point, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah, fun is always going to help, and then I think too, we parents, you sort of just get used to doing things, and so you forget that, like, oh, my kid's not used to walking in the store and resisting buying something, or knowing when it's time to, or they're not maybe as focused on the time. And so they're not going to know that you have to leave the playground in order to get home to have dinner, so um, definitely going into places, going into new, I mean, especially new kind of situations, is explaining those rules and expectations. And then, yeah, reminders are great too. And like going through that every time really helps get everyone on the same page. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. How can a parent recognize their triggers? Yeah, I think, just helping them be aware of patterns that they have when certain things happen, noticing their emotional response to when things happen. It's going to usually feel really strong, and there may be some like other physical kind of clues like increased heart rate, kind of feeling kind of like that flush of anger, perhaps. What are some other examples? How do you all know your triggers? Anyone have? Yeah, journaling. Yes. Yeah, so that can help pick out patterns. Yeah, so a lot of it is being able to identify kind of your emotions with that. And then, it's hope that like once you're sort of aware of that, like, oh no, my child's made a mess. You know, this may upset me, but I'm gonna kind of just turn my back for a minute and take a few deep breaths before I react, because I know messes for me can be or those unexpected messes can be triggering, for example. Right. So getting close to that explosion. Yeah. So just kind of noticing when that happens over and over is a good way to say, you know what, that behavior must be triggering for me, because I start to feel like this every time it happens. So then we want to think about how to prevent it or how we can better respond to that. And all of this is normal, and we're all going to have different kind of triggers. It's just trying to be aware of them and keeping their impact on our behavior to a minimum. Yeah. Again, we're not going to be perfect at it, but it's just a practice. So,
No, and I think, Melissa, you gave us a lot of like really great actionable steps that they can actually, work with the families that They're working
Mhm.
with, we did ACEs last week, and that's kind of more
Okay.
theoretical. How are we building strong brains? But these are like some really great things that, our organizations can model for these parents that really do help build strong brains. So I think all of this is really actionable and practical. So thank you so
Okay.
much for.
Sure. And the resources that are shared go way into more detail about these things. We only have so much time together, and we wanted to definitely hit on the things that you all were interested in talking about. Um, but yeah, and then I don't know if my contact information will be shared, but I'm happy to answer questions via email or phone call if needed. And what I really like doing is connecting people with resources. So even if I can't help you, I can definitely probably find somewhere for you to go. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely be sure to share your contact information, Melissa, and
Okay,
all
great.
those awesome resources that you gave us. And then of course,
Yeah,
the slides and the video too, I'll post on our webpage for everyone.
sure.
And y'all are
Yeah.
free to share it with coworkers and families, even using the slides, I think to go over with families would be great. To just teach those principles. So y'all are welcome to have those. So thank you so much, Melissa, again for presenting. Thank you everybody for all the contributions that you made to our conversation today and just for being here. Like I said, I'll try to get this video out probably by tomorrow on the web page, and then I'll follow up with all of the extra materials this afternoon via email with the CEU stuff and video stuff and all of that. And I think that should pretty much close us up. I hope everyone has a great rest of your Monday and a great rest of your week. Enjoy the sunshine, and we will see y'all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.